as a little logistical item. You'll notice in the GoToWebinar control panel that came up when you join the meeting that there's a section that says questions. If you expand that, you can type in your questions there, and I'll be keeping an eye on that so that I can respond to your questions as we go. There's going to be a lot of people on the webinar, and so your microphone will be muted so we won't have a bunch of background noise and everybody can hear. But for sure, definitely want to hear from you and respond to your questions. So definitely use that question section of the GoToWebinar interface there as often as you like, and I'll be keeping an eye on that. Want to start off here by running a poll. Oh, I guess I hit the wrong button there. So I just want to launch that real quick. You guys should see a poll there on your screen now that says, what are your top priorities? So just want to get a feel for you and what matters to you, so we make sure we focus our time here today on what's most important to you. Hopefully, we'll be able to wrap this up in about 40 minutes and still have a little bit of time for some Q&A and let you guys get back to work. I know you're all very busy, and again, appreciate your time. Okay, so it looks like we've got wrapped that up, and it looks like most everybody is interested in sales accountability, and then lead generation is coming second. So that's great, because we're going to talk about both of those things today. So let's get to it. Let's see, I want to make sure that that's not showing up on your screen. And now you should start seeing my screen. Okay. So first, a little introduction to what SalesNexus is all about. Our mission as a company is to help as many businesses grow as we possibly can. And that's because we believe that when your business grows, you're literally making the world a better place. We really believe that when your business grows, the lives of your employees are improved, their families, your customers, their families are all better off as your business grows, and the communities that all of them live in are also better as you pay taxes and contribute to organizations and spend money in those communities. So that's why we really believe in doing everything we can to help you grow your business, and as we'll talk here, you'll hear me talk about how we get really involved in helping our customers implement the technology we provide to make sure that they really get where they're going, which is normally business growth. So the way we do that is we provide a CRM and marketing automation solution that's all in one. You know, most of you are probably familiar. You've got CRM platforms that allow you to then purchase an additional marketing automation system that you bolt on, and some analytics tools that you bolt on, and pretty soon you got this thing that's so complex that you either need full-time people internally managing it, or you need consultants that are charging you by the hour to help you keep it all running. What we've done is combined all of that into one simple platform. It's really easy to use for a sales team, and we provide all the services that you need to set it up, customize it to your business, and make it work for you. So, sales leadership best practices. In my mind, at a very high level, these are the things that you have to get good at. You have to know what your sales process is. You got to be able to measure it. You have to be able to hold the team accountable to following the process, following the rules, and so on. You've got to teach everybody to be good at time management. And then there's some other essential sort of soft skills that I wanted to start off with. Number one, lead nurturing is essential. We're going to talk about that in a minute and why it's so essential. Things have changed since I got started in sales, and it makes lead nurturing all the more important. And empathy is essential. When I say empathy, I don't mean just listening. I mean really understanding the customer. So here's a little definition I found. The ability to step into the shoes of another person, aiming to understand their feelings and perspectives, and to use that understanding to guide our actions. So to me, that last piece is the key. That's what makes it very different than what most of us have been taught, right? We've learned all about how important listening skills are. I was trained through Sandler sales training, which some of you may be familiar with in the early part of my career. And listening is certainly a big part of what they teach, what most consultative sales methodologies teach. They teach you to do things like measure the amount of time you're speaking versus the amount of time the customer's speaking, and try to get things to where the customer's doing most of the talking, which obviously is an important step. But that's not the end of the road there. You've got to know why you're listening, right? We want to not just understand the customer and be able to step into their shoes, but understand the things that are crucial for us to understand so that we can take action, right? So we can literally help the customer accomplish something, right? So that's a little different than just listening. It means we have to take a leadership role in the conversation and guide it, because we're the domain expert, not the customer. So we know what we need to know. We need to guide the conversation while listening and keeping them talking. In fact, I've got the URL here. We just posted a blog post with a few exercises that you can do with your team to teach them this empathetic learning, or listening, sorry. So you might want to check that out. In fact, if you just go to the salesnexus.com/blog, it'll be the first one there. It's the most recent post. So check that out. Now, the other key piece that I mentioned, lead nurturing. So this is a graph of call response times. So how quickly do companies respond to a lead? You can see very few of them do it in 5 minutes. A lot of them take more than a day. And everybody else is kind of spread out over the first 4 hours or so, right? Well, that's not going to cut it. That's the bottom line. And I'm going to tell you why. So here's a study. There's 15 different versions of the same study. You can do your own Googling and you can find these facts. This is not open for debate anymore. It's just a fact. Anybody that's done any kind of online marketing and spent any kind of money and time on that will know this already. If you're thinking about doing that, then you better get ready for this fact. Response time is the only thing that matters, essentially, in responding to an incoming lead in today's world. You can see how much more of your leads become qualified, once a salesperson talks to them and they grade them as qualified, when you call them within 5 minutes. If you wait even 10 minutes, look how much the qualification rate falls off. And then by the time you've even gotten to an hour, you're almost to nothing. So I've found in talking to lots of customers that this is really tough for people to accept. If you're running a sales team now, you've probably been selling for a while, like me, which means you learn to sell in an entirely different environment, right? And what's changed mostly, of course, is the internet. Your customers don't need you to educate themselves. That's not the role of the salesperson anymore. And they have access to all of your competitors on the internet with just a click of a button, right? Type in a few keys in Google and click on a link and boom, you're on the competitor site. So point is, whatever I'm searching for, I might be searching for new fishing rods, right? Well, if I go to one site and I fill out a form requesting information or requesting a quote or requesting an appointment or whatever it might be, and I don't hear back from you pretty soon, guess what I'm doing in the meantime while I'm waiting for you to call me? I'm on your competitor site filling out a form, asking for information, requesting a quote, whatever. The point is, I'm going to go around the internet over the course of 5 or 10 or 15 minutes asking for what I need. And whoever responds first wins. That's it. I'm not going to preach to you about it. I just want you to understand it's the truth. Go do your own research. You'll see that it's been studied and studied and studied, and it's just true. I've experienced it firsthand in our business, and we see it with lots of our customers. So you've got to get ready to respond to leads in this way. And this doesn't just apply to the leads that come through your website. It's the same even if you're doing a good old-fashioned cold call. Because what do you think happens in today's world when you make a cold call and you're lucky enough to get somebody on the phone and you're lucky enough to have an actual conversation with them and engage them and get them a little bit interested? What do you think they do when you hang up the phone? They go to their computer and they type a few things in Google, and the next thing you know, they might be on your site, but they might also be on your competitor's site. So you've got to be engaging with them quickly. Do not let days go by. So this is another way of making the same point. Essentially, the internet is used by your customers in the early stages of buying. In fact, we do a lot of talks about lead nurturing where we talk about the buying cycle. And customers don't need salespeople to learn things, right? They're going to avoid talking to your sales team until the last possible moment. And that means that they're going to do lots of research online. And when they finally contact you, they're way down here, you know? They're getting close to making decisions. They've learned everything they need to learn. They don't need a salesperson to educate them, right? That's why you've got to have some kind of automated lead nurturing process in place, because we're all human. I don't care how many salespeople you have. Most businesses can't afford to overstaff the sales department, right? And so you're going to have ups and downs of lead flow. You're going to have busy times of the day, busy times of the year, whatever. There's going to be times when there's more leads to respond to than you have people. There's going to be times when the opposite is true, of course. But the point is, if this is your customer's buying process, they become aware of some problem, they start educating themselves online, on the internet, through Google, whatever, not through your salesperson. This is not when they contact you. This is when they contact you. When they start to think, hey, I need to get some pricing. I need to get some details about financing or whatever, things I can't get on the internet. That's when they're going to contact you, and then they start making decisions. So you've got to have a series of messages that sort of matches up with that process, right? So you're putting the right messages in their hands at the right time. If I'm just becoming aware of a problem and I'm starting to think that I might want to do something about it, but I want to learn more about it, then case studies are great, right? Here's a customer like you and how that has similar problem and how they solved it. Tips on how to fix that problem, things like that. So you want to totally automate that. Whoops, sorry guys, I thought I had turned off my phone before. So enough on lead nurturing for now. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Does this whiteboard look familiar? Is this your pipeline management system? You know, a lot of people we talk to now will have some sort of Excel sheet that they essentially do the same thing in, right? Believe it or not, in 2016, with all the CRM products that are out there, very few companies are actually doing it with a CRM. The point is, especially in this fast-paced environment that we're talking about here, where leads need to be responded to quickly and they need to be responded to with the right information. You can't just give everybody the same stuff. It's got to be personalized. You need information that lets you manage your pipeline in a way that's unique to you, that tells you something. Most importantly, any of you that have managed salespeople for any amount of time, you know that this is not enough information to hold your salespeople accountable, right? It's really easy for me as a salesperson to sit in a sales meeting and say, yeah, sure, boss, I got 2 people that agreed to meet with me next week. And then next week I might tell you, yeah, well, you know, one of those guys canceled the appointment on me or whatever, right? We've got to have details that tell us that these are really qualified opportunities, right? So here's just an example. This is just something I dumped out of our CRM that we use in our business. Just leads coming in from a certain source that have been marked as qualified by the sales rep. And in our world, the things that really matter that tell me that we're dealing with a truly qualified opportunity are, what are they currently using? You know, what's their current CRM? What's their role in the decision? Obviously, if they're not a decision maker or, you know, sort of the leader of the committee, then it's probably not a great level of qualification. And then how many users? That's what defines the economic value to us, and also the time frame. If they're buying next year, that's not really an opportunity right now. In your business, it's different things, right? It's not these things. It's other things. You need to be able to look at a report like this that shows you those things that matter to you. That's how you know which opportunities are likely to close and which ones aren't. Obviously, you want to have dashboards and things like that. This is just a screenshot of my dashboard. You know, the key here is you want to measure things coming through your sales process, right? How many calls are getting made by the salespeople? Obviously, that's important. But how many of those calls are turning into a qualified lead, right? That's really more important, right? And then, oh, by the way, I might want to filter that a little bit and say, I don't want to know how many calls we made to, in my case, 1 or 2 user accounts. I want to know how many calls we made that have at least 10 users or more, or how many qualified opportunities we found that have 10 users or more, because those are the high value opportunities to us, right? In your business, it might be, you know, show me how many calls we made to accounts with 100 or more employees, or you know, that manufacture a certain kind of product because that's your real sweet spot or something like that. You need to be able to set up these kind of reports so that they're based on those key details. Here's just another example. You know, one of the things we run into a lot when we're setting up CRMs for customers is that they just don't know what their sales process is. And so they don't know where to start measuring, right? And, you know, honestly, you could bring in a consultant and spend a whole bunch of money trying to figure out what your sales process is. And I'm not saying that's not a good idea. It is, if you get the right consultant, of course. But it can be expensive, and it's also time-consuming. And ultimately, your sales process is going to change, and it's going to change pretty often. You know, it's, again, the internet's changing things every day, right? Your marketplace is changing quickly. Your competitors are changing what they're doing quickly. So what you need to measure is going to change pretty often too. So you need a system that's going to let you make changes pretty quickly and easily. Point of this slide here is just to say you might want to start with just really generic metrics and let that guide you to what matters and what doesn't. In other words, if I don't even know how many tasks my salespeople are completing every day, then maybe I just need to measure that for a little while before I can decide which kind of tasks I really want to measure, if that makes sense. Or, how many emails are they sending? Just let's get gross volume, at least get that measured, and then we can start to sort of iterate our way into figuring out what the process is. So the point here is you don't have to have all the answers to get started. You just got to get started. So when you're talking about getting accountability in place with your team, then it's important to have consequences as well, right? I mean, I can have a dashboard that tells me how many calls are getting made. I may have a really in-depth process that says we're going to each make 100 calls a day, and we want to qualify 25 new opportunities every day, and we want to have 2 demos and 3 proposals every day, and so on and so forth, right? I can have all kinds of metrics like that. But those are just goals if there's no consequence, right? Should there be a carrot? You betcha. Can you have contests and say, if you exceed those goals, you win a reward, or you go into the pool for the bonus at the end of the month or whatever? Heck yeah. But you also need the stick. That's the bottom line. The first time when your sales rep doesn't follow those must-have objectives, maybe your goal is that at the end of every week, they should have an average of 50 calls a day. So that's going to give them the flexibility to have one day where they were out all day meeting with customers and they didn't make many calls, but the other few days of the week they made more, right? But at the end of the week, if anybody didn't average 50, well, that's a problem, right? So the first time that happens, you don't bring them in, of course, and threaten to fire them or anything like that. But what you do is you just sit them down and say, hey, you didn't hit your goal. What's the problem? How can I help? What's going wrong? What can we do differently? You're coaching them, right? And then the second time it happens, that's when you start to get a little more serious, right? Okay, this is the second time it's happened. We talked about what we can do differently. I offered to help with this, that, and the other thing. Why are we still having this problem? If you don't rectify it, then there's going to be a consequence, right? And then the third time it happens, there has to be some kind of consequence. What we do in our business a lot, and I see other customers doing, when you have inbound leads, you're feeding the sales rep with leads. Well, maybe they don't get leads for a little while. That's the consequence. That's pretty motivating, right? Again, this is not to say that you don't have the carrot as well and you're not rewarding them for good performance. Absolutely, you should be doing that. But I think the piece that most sales managers have trouble with is the consequence part. Honestly, more often than not, when we're engaging with new customers and setting up a CRM for them, the inmates are running the asylum. Management doesn't have the confidence to stand up in front of the team and say, this is the way we're going to do it, guys, and these are the expectations, and they're not negotiable. Should you make the salespeople part of that discussion initially? Heck yeah. But once they're decided, they have to be decided. Okay, time management. So, that's, to me, going way back now, I got started in sales back when ACT was the only sales tool out there. And that was the main thing it did for me, is it was a time management tool, right? It allowed me to go to something like this, a task list, and I just knew who I need to call today, right? And so if somebody tells me today, hey, Craig, this is great, I'd love to learn more about it, but I don't have time right now, or our budget cycle is such that we're not going to be really looking at this until August or whatever, then I can put a follow-up to call them back in August and forget about them, right? You know, it's a good old-fashioned tickler file that back in the days before even ACT was the way that most good salespeople manage things. But one way or the other, you and your salespeople have to partner together in this. It cannot be left up to them. Maybe if you're really lucky, you've got an awesome bunch of experienced pros, and they've already got their own awesome way of managing their day and keeping on track of follow-ups and managing their time. Maybe. I highly doubt it. And even if that's the case, the problem is that, again, in today's world, if they are the only person that owns that system, that has visibility into that system, then it's going to create slowness in your process that's going to kill you, especially when it comes to internet leads, but as we talked about before, all kinds of other leads as well. You've got to have visibility into it. You've got to be able to go to your salesperson's to-do list when he's out sick and go, who is he calling on today? And who do we really need to make sure we touch base with, even though Sam can't do it, right? Or when a customer calls in and says, you know, hey, I had a conference call scheduled with Sam, then somebody needs to be able to go in there and, you know, Sam's whatever, outside smoking a cigarette, who knows? You know, we need to be able to go in there and look and see, oh yeah, I see you there, Tiffany. I see that you had this scheduled. He's just stepped away, blah, 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 right? I need to be able to, when I let a salesperson go, know who he was planning to follow up with, right? I've spent a lot of marketing money, a lot of advertising money, a lot of time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears generating these leads. I cannot just throw them into my salespeople's hands and hope that they take great care of them. Plus the fact that having a system like that, like this, lets you just do basic things like sort your tasks so that all my calls where this is basically our nomenclature for, this is a lead that started a free trial of our system, and we've called them a few times, and this is the last time we're calling. So we have a specific voicemail that we're going to leave, kind of what we call firing in them, that says this is the last time we're calling. So if you need our help, you're going to have to call us at this point, right? So I can go through those calls very quickly. They're all on the top of my list. And I can then, if I talk to Ralph here, and he says, oh, well, I'm glad you caught me. I have some questions. I'd like to do this and that, and can you send me a proposal, let's say. Well, I don't need to do it right now, right? I can keep doing my calls because we all know that making the calls in the morning is more productive, but I can schedule a follow-up to send him the proposal this afternoon. So basic time management like this lets us take advantage of what we know about prospects, right? In my business, calling people first thing in the morning is what works. In your business, if you're selling something to consumers or homeowners, let's say, then you probably are calling them around 5, 6, 7 p.m., right? But whatever, you want to make sure that your salespeople can maximize that time window where people are most available, and do all the paperwork and follow-up work and other stuff, non-selling at other times, right? And without some sort of time management system, you just can't do it. So back to lead nurturing. We want to put the right message in the right place at the right time. What that means is not just a really beautiful email that you've paid some marketing firm a few $1,000 to create for you. I mean the right message for that particular person at the moment that they're going to care about it. And that moment is not a long window of time. It's not days. It's a few hours, right? They just visited your site. They just hit this particular page on your site, and watched a video. You know something about them because of what they watched. Let's send them messages that are relevant to that, not completely irrelevant. When you do that, all we're doing is taking what we talked about before, this buying process that the customer is going through, creating a series of messages that match that process, and now we're just adding one extra layer to it. When somebody clicks on one of those emails to watch the video or download the white paper or read a case study or whatever it is, then my salesperson gets alerted in real time, immediately. Because if I just watched your video about, putting a better roof on my house, then if you call me in the next hour, I'm going to remember that video. You might have trouble catching me because I may have gotten up and gone on to do something else if you don't call me in the first 15 or 30 minutes. But I'll remember it, right? If you wait until tomorrow morning or after lunch or whatever, I'm not even going to remember watching that video, right? So that's why this is so powerful. I just watched your video full of customer testimonials, case studies of customers just like me and the problems they had and how your product solved my problem. I just watched it. And all of a sudden the phone's ringing and it's your salesperson saying, hey, Craig, I noticed you just took a look at our video on creating a better, more long-lasting roof for your home. What do you think about that, right? And so we're instantly having this very warm conversation. It's not a cold call anymore. I'm talking to my prospect about something that I know he cares about. So your salesperson can be armed with different scripts depending upon the different pieces that the customer's engaged with. This is a great way to not just nurture leads, but generate leads as well. You can create big lists and put them on automated campaigns that just go out and your salespeople don't even need to worry about it. And all they do is call the people that engage with those emails. It works every time it's tried. That's the good news. Here's just an example. A customer that we have recently worked with they do credit card processing services. So I don't, if you don't know anything about that business, it's a very competitive business. I'm not going to say it's shady, but let's just say that there's a lot of people in that business that, I wouldn't let them borrow my car. I'm not saying that about my customer. This is a great organization. They've done very well. And they have a great sales process. But they had never started, it was all phone-based, and they had never started collecting email addresses. So all we did was start having the salespeople ask for the email address, right? At the time, they were doing $500,000 in sales. Their close rate was about 20%. They had 10 salespeople. So after a few months of collecting email addresses and then putting them all on a lead nurturing campaign, right? They saw an increase of $42,000 in sales every month, almost $500,000 in the first year, just by putting a lead nurturing process in place. It's pure numbers. Yours will be the same, believe it or not. Unless your close rate is something awesome like 80%, then the fact of the matter is you're talking to tons of people that you never sell anything to. And if all you do is take those people and just stay in touch with them through some automated campaign, some of that's going to come back to you. And it doesn't have to be a lot to add up to something real in terms of dollars. So what works in terms of getting a system like this in place? First of all, you got to plan for success. Way too often we see companies that sign up to the technology and really haven't thought about it at all. It's almost as if they're expecting the technology to answer their questions about how do we want to do business. It needs to be the other way around. You got to think about, what do I want my process to be? Now, let me find some technology that will best fit that process. The other big challenge, of course, is getting your salespeople to use it. That's the number one reason that implementation of sales technology fails. So if you don't get that right, you might as well not try. So you want to get them involved in defining the process, in selecting the right technology, in setting it up. You know, you want to be careful. You don't want to let the inmates run the asylum, because ultimately part of it is the point of it is to manage the salespeople. But you need to get their buy-in. There's no question about it. And you got to make sure you provide them some really good training where you're not just showing them how to press buttons in software, but you're showing them, okay, guys, when we go to these trade shows that we go to once a month, here's what we do when we get back to the office. Here's how I want you doing things in the CRM with those trade show leads. You know, get specific to what matters to them. That's going to allow them to provide you with consistent data input, because if you don't have consistent data input, then you really don't have consistent metrics or measurements or reports, and you're not going to get what you want at a management level. Ultimately, as we touched on earlier, you want actionable management metrics. That means the difference between, hey boss, I made 50 calls today, versus, hey boss, I made 50 calls, but only 5 of those were to good-sized clients, right? Because now with that second piece of information, I can go down the hall and go, hey, Bob, good job making your 50 calls, but we need to look at who we're calling, right? So here's what people get wrong frequently. They put the features in front of the process, right? It's really easy. Most of you probably know there's a lot of options out there, right? And so you can get really dazzled with all the super cool whiz-bang technology that's out there that will do really neat stuff. No question that it is really, some of it is amazing. The problem is it's not about that. It's about your business and your process and making it more efficient and more effective. Lack of sales involvement, we really kind of just touched on that. And then lack of integrations. That's another key piece. It can be a big part of getting the salespeople involved. If they have to go through a real arduous process of jumping through a lot of hoops and creating a lot of paperwork and talking to lots of people and sending lots of emails in order to process an email, or I'm sorry, to process an order, well, then maybe you can automate that by hooking the CRM up with your ERP or your accounting system. Or if they frequently find themselves in front of a customer who asks them, hey, what's going on with the order I placed last week for so-and-so? And they don't have the information in their hands to answer the customer's question, well, give it to them. Hook the CRM up with your, again, your accounting system, your ERP, whatever, your operational platform, so that they can answer those questions, so that they have that important customer data at their fingertips. So when you're getting ready to implement your system, you want to make sure you've really thought about the process. You want to get your data prepared. That's another really big hang up that people run into. You know, if you don't have a system today and you're sitting there thinking, oh man, we're going to have this awesome lead nurturing campaign and we're going to have all these leads that we're processing every month getting messages from us, and they're going to start calling us back and coming back to our website, and all this wonderful stuff is going to happen, right? And it is, except now, where are all the leads right now that you've gotten over the last couple of years? Are they in your salespeople's hands? And does salesperson A have them in Outlook, and salesperson B has them on his iPhone, and salesperson C has them in an Excel file? And oh, by the way, because there's been accounts that have been handed from one sales rep to another, half of those accounts are on all 3 salespersons' systems, and now you've got to bring all that together and get it into one up-to-date, accurate file. That's not a trivial exercise. So get to work on that now, and or find a partner that can help you with that. And then also make sure that you're allocating the right resources internally. It's not, no matter how great the vendor is that you work with or the consultant that you bring in or whatever, they can't do it all. You are going to have to do a lot. Mostly, you have to define the process and answer the questions about what do we want to track, what are the reports we need, what are the dashboards we need, how does the process need to flow, what needs to be in the emails, right? Only you can answer those questions. Other people can write them and design them and create dashboards for you, but not without your input. So be sure that somebody on your time has the expertise, number one, and number two, the time to do it. So just to give you a little idea of, from a financial point of view, we talked about for a team of 10 users, 10 salespeople, seeing a $500,000 in increase in sales, a 10% increase. A $5 million business saw a $500,000 increase in sales. 10% is the benchmark that I like to use. You should expect a lead nurturing program to increase your sales by 10% within a year. So however big your business is, what's 10% of it? That's the reason you need to do this. Now, what's it going to cost you? Well, for a 10-user system, for working with most of the options out there, you're going to have a subscription to the CRM, and you're going to have a subscription to a marketing automation platform. Both of those are pretty darn expensive, as you can see. And oh, by the way, you got to pay somebody to set it all up for you. You've got to clean up your data like we just talked about. You got to customize the CRM. You got to create all the marketing content, the emails and messages and white papers and things like that. And you got to train the team. And then a lot of times you got to pay extra for premium support, meaning, I just want to be able to call somebody and get an answer the same day. With most platforms, that's an additional charge. So we're talking expensive here. We're talking $35,000 to $45,000 in the first year for a group of 10 salespeople. As I mentioned earlier, where SalesNexus is different is we're going to do all of this for you, and we're going to keep it affordable. For 10 users, our package that includes everything, setting the whole system up, writing all the emails with your input, loading all your data, cleaning it up, integrating with other systems that you use in your business, the turnkey solution is $19,000. So it's about half of what you would see with some of the more popular solutions out there. Now, if what we're talking about here today is resonating with you, I haven't had a lot of time to go into detail on anything. We're just kind of hitting all the high notes. We're introducing a sales leadership workshop this summer. And if you'd like to get involved, we'd love to have you. You're going to get an email as a follow-up to today's webinar that will have a link to register for the workshop. We're going to get into nurturing those essential skills that we talked about, those listening and empathy skills, teaching salespeople how to do that. We're going to get into understanding what your buying process, your customer's buying process is, and really how to break that down and really understand the mental process they're going through and how you can adjust your messages to fit their place in the process at any one moment. Developing a consistent selling process, knowing what to measure, knowing how to hold people accountable to it, how to coach salespeople, and hiring and training salespeople, how to find good salespeople that fit your business and your model, and how to teach them how to do things the way you do things. So we're going to start on July 12th, and we're going to do it every other week for 3 weeks for an hour. So it's going to be 3 hours altogether, starting July 12th and wrapping up on August 9th. So again, you can go here. You can go to bit.ly/July 12, 2016, and you can register right now. or you'll get an email with a link to that here in just a little bit. Okay, so there's been a couple of questions came in I want to be sure and respond to. If you're currently actively searching for a CRM or a lead nurturing marketing automation system, then definitely reach out to us. Our team can hold about a 15 to 20 minute phone conversation with you to ask you a few questions and identify whether or not SalesNexus might be able to help you. And hey, if we're not, then we're happy to recommend a few others. We've been doing this for 15 years and we're not a fit for everybody. And we're happy to give you our 2 cents about other options that might be a better fit. If you're not sure that you need a system like this, then again, our sales team can help with that. We put together what we call an investment summary. A lot of times what we find is, maybe if you're in charge of marketing for a company that's very sales driven, or maybe you're the VP of sales, but upper management isn't on board with putting a system in place. One way or the other, you really need to figure out a way to boil the argument down to dollars and cents, right? And so that's what we can do. 15, 20-minute conversation. We'll ask you a few questions about, your sales process and your team and your market. And we'll put together an investment summary that actually shows you can expect to see this kind of increase in sales by the end of 12 months of using a system like this. And here's what it would cost to do that. So that can be very powerful to put in front of the CEO or the CFO or other folks on your team. Okay, let's see real quick. Okay, here's a question about integration. Yeah, our system can be integrated with most ERPs, most accounting systems. We have an open API, so really there's nothing we can't integrate with. It's more a question of how difficult it is on the other end of the equation. But most of the ERPs and accounting systems we've seen and worked with before, Microsoft Navision, what's the Sage 50 accounting, which is the old Peachtree, those kind of systems. Been there, done that. We can plug you into those systems. Even back-end system, homegrown back-end systems that you guys are the only ones that use. There's ways to make that work. And we can talk to you about different strategies that will be affordable and not too complex if you don't have a lot of technical resource on your side. We don't integrate with other CRMs and marketing automation systems like you may be using today. Those are our competitors. So our intent would be to replace those systems. Here's a question about lead generation, which I didn't really dig into a lot, and I apologize for that. As there's a lot of sources out there to build lists, and I would encourage you to go and investigate all of them that you think would be relevant to your business. Some of them can be very expensive, especially if you're trying to get email lists built. But if there's sources that are relevant in your specific industry, then that's worth looking at, because typically those are going to be the best quality lists, right? Industry trade association, things like that. Now, as a part of a subscription to SalesNexus, you get access to leadferret.com. Leadferret is our partner, and they provide lists. It's more broad-based. They have 50 million business contacts all over the U.S. and Canada with their email addresses. And you get, as a subscriber to SalesNexus, 500 Leadferret contacts per user per month. So that means each person on your team is getting 6,000 emails a year as a part of your SalesNexus subscription. So you can go in and search for a specific industry or a specific state or a certain title or all of that combined and move them over to SalesNexus and put them on an automated drip campaign, and then your salespeople call the people that click, like we talked about before. So that's all included in the SalesNexus lead generation package. Also, when you talk to us here at SalesNexus, ask about our starter kit. That's a really affordable package that we've got that can help you get started with using this lead nurturing capability to generate leads. Let's see. Here's a question about transferring data from other systems. Yeah, so you can send us a backup of your current CRM data, whatever system you're using. You know, we all know the big names. They'll all give you some kind of backup, and we're used to seeing what they give you. And we can take that and migrate it into our system so you won't lose anything. You won't lose the notes and the sales opportunities and the follow-up calls and your custom fields. All of that transfers over. And let's see, here's another question about the sales leadership workshop. Yeah, so it's going to be online. That's a good question. I didn't mention that earlier. So it'll be virtual meetings. We're going to keep it relatively small, 10 to 15 people max. And so you want to get signed up if you're interested at all before we get full, so that we can keep the lines open and, you know, everybody can talk, and we can really dig into each and every one of the participants' businesses in some detail. You know, I find that what's most instructive for most people is to try to answer the questions for someone else's business and then turn around and try to answer them about your own business, because it's really difficult to be objective about your own business. But once you go through it, the thought process, trying to help someone else, then you start to realize what matters when you focus your attention on your own business. So that's what we'll do. We'll kind of go around and just work on each and every one of our businesses and talk about issues and come up with solutions. So yeah, it'll be an online course. We'll just all join a meeting like this each week, and we'll record it, and we'll post the recordings so that you can go back and reference them, and we'll have some exercises to do in between, things to do with your sales team, things like that. Okay, well, really appreciate everybody's time, and hope that you have gotten something out of today's presentation. When you leave the webinar, you'll be asked to complete a survey. I really would appreciate it if you take a few minutes, won't even take a few minutes, take you like a minute, to answer 3 or 4 questions there, just to give us a little bit of a grade on how we did here today in the webinar and what we can do better next time. Really appreciate that, and hope you all have a great afternoon, and look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.